Raleigh here with Live Forever Young Radio. I am here with Bob as usual. How you doing today, Bob?
Good, Raleigh. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Doing good. Getting ready to talk about a really good topic.
Because it's February.
You got it.
It's Heart Health Month.
Read my mind.
Yeah.
Go on. Tell them.
It's also Black History Month.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk about the essential information for people to know to maintain a healthy heart, which, because of the things you do to get a healthy heart, it has a residual effect on your entire body.
And your entire life.
Some of the things we'll talk about is stress management, which is a really big one. You know, we were just saying, Raleigh, that if somebody passes away and they have a spouse, so let's say a man dies, the next day, the surviving wife has a 21 times higher chance of having a heart attack than if that had not happened.
So almost a quarter more of an increase.
No, 21 times.
Oh, 21.
Not 21%.
21 times.
21 times higher.
That is way higher than I thought.
Way higher. And it remains for several weeks afterwards at about a 6 times higher risk.
Ooh. And is this like broken heart syndrome here?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, it's
just kidding.
The stress of it, but there's some type of a spiritual aspect to it also, where people are together for a long time.
Right.
Usually young married couples don't experience this because very few young people die from heart attacks. This is something that happens when you get to your 50s, 60s, 70s, and people have been married for a long time.
At that point, yeah.
It's not with everything, because some people get remarried when they're later. I had a really good friend whose wife passed away when he was 82, and he ended up getting married to his high school sweetheart.
Oh, wow.
Who he hadn't seen since he was 18.
Wow.
And they ended up together, and he ended up getting married to her.
Interesting. At 82.
At 82.
You're never too old for love.
Yeah.
And it's also Valentine's. So, there you go. Heart.
Yeah.
It goes with the theme.
Absolutely. So this is just good information to know. Now, why is that good information to know? Because when you have a surviving spouse, they need immediate attention.
Support.
From their family.
Absolutely.
Support. Okay. And you want to stay with them, because if the surviving spouse has a heart attack, you want somebody to be there for them, to call 911, to resuscitate them if necessary, but also to lessen that 21 times. If the person's by themselves, and a lot of people will do this, they'll go, I just want to be by myself. Well, don't fall for that. Stay nearby. And what they mean is, I want to be by myself for a short period here.
Right.
To grieve without other people watching me. Okay. So this just happened yesterday. A good friend of mine died. He was 47 years old.
Wow.
He actually fell in downtown St. Pete. He tripped on the sidewalk and hit his head, and he died.
Oh my gosh.
And his best friend lives here in St. Pete, and he was like that. He needed a little time to himself, but then he wanted to be with his friends. Then he wanted a little time to himself. But his friends are there for him if he needs them. And it's the same thing with older people.
Right.
You want to be there for them, and don't say, okay, everybody out of the house, everybody leave. We're all leaving, and we're going to leave grandma alone all by herself. Bad idea. Bad idea.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good at all, just in general.
Yeah.
I know when something like a death occurs, I mean, you want to be around people. That's why they have, the wakes and time for the family to get together to show that support. So I know it, like, I get what you're saying. A lot of times people, they just want to be able to grieve alone and everything, and that's important. But don't let it get to a point where it becomes unhealthy. Make sure you're around, so then when they're ready for that, you can be there. It'll definitely help lessen that 21 times.
Yeah. So here's another thing, Raleigh, it's good for people to know. And this, I don't have a lot of detail on this. It was just going to be a general thing, which we can kind of benefit from the generality. It's about anger. So if people are constantly angry about things,
Mm-hmm.
their risk of heart attack goes up by 5 times.
Mm.
And their risk of stroke goes up by 3 times.
Oof.
Right? And so this is kind of a new phenomenon that's been going on, is people watching the news, they're watching alt news,
Mm-hmm.
and the vast majority of it is what's going on that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
The war, the election, the this, the that. It's all stuff that makes people angry.
It is.
Okay? Just today, there was a thing on the radio, without giving the details, it was about a group of people that were protesting something, and the police were called, and the police determined that nothing had gone wrong, everything was fine, they dispersed them. Then a different agency, without naming names, intervened and said, oh no, we think there was a crime committed. They brought them to trial, and 5 people were sentenced to 10 years in prison for
Protesting.
So now, guess what's the logical thing that people who agreed with the protesters?
Anger.
You'd be angry. 10 years in prison for standing in front of this building with a sign, right?
Mm.
Now they're going to jail for 10 years. And it wasn't him. And before 3 years ago, there wasn't even such a law on the books.
Yeah, that's
Congress never even approved it. It's like, that's anger.
right.
So now, if you're in a constant state of anger because of things like this happening, well, there you go. You're at 5 times the risk of a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and one of the things, I don't know how old the stat is or how long ago you heard it, but also the accessibility of bad news on your smartphone.
Yeah.
You're getting a message. You're getting a notification. Hey, you should be outraged because.
Yeah.
This should make you angry because. And while that all may be valid, there might be things that you should be concerned about and want to make sure you can make a change on. To have that constantly barraged in your face, it'll raise your tension, stress, anger, all of it.
Exactly. So, listen, like you just said, it's perfectly legit to be concerned. Oh, this is going on. Maybe, wherever that jurisdiction was that did this, maybe I won't vote for that person.
Right.
Right. And that's all fine. You can vote for somebody else. It's a free country for the most part. But you also want to be really aware that you have this increased risk of dying.
Right.
So
It's true.
I saw something on a YouTube video the other day, and there was a person giving advice about the philosophy of life. And he said, think about an event that's occurring and what your emotional response is to it,
Mm-hmm.
including anger, and then ask yourself, is this going to make any difference to me 10 years from now?
Yep.
He goes, if I look forward 10 years and go, that wouldn't make any difference. If I look back from 10 years from now, he goes, then just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Doesn't mean that you don't absorb the information and take action that
Right.
you feel is appropriate, but let go of the anger piece, be able to identify, I'm in anger and I know I don't want this anger, but I do want to be aware,
Mm-hmm.
right? Create a pattern interrupt.
Yep.
All right. Tap. Even though up until now I thought I had to get angry every time I hear news like this, I completely love and accept myself anyway.
Right.
Right. And I'm so grateful now that I realize I can listen to news, both good and bad, and remain at peace.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Cross your hands on your heart and breathe in, breathe out. Create a feeling of peacefulness. Right. And associate that with the affirmation that you just made. This will help to you avoid being a statistic
Right.
of the fivefold.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So anyway, that's kind of the intro, but there's a lot of other things that help people to have a healthy heart.
Mm-hmm.
There's physical things.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we're going to cover a lot of
yeah. And so one of them is we know that people with diabetes have a much, much higher risk of having a heart attack
Mhm.
or having coronary artery disease than people who don't have high blood sugar.
Right.
So we know this because when people have high blood sugar, a glycation cascade occurs in the bloodstream where sugar is glycating valuable proteins and creating glycotoxins and throwing off superoxide, which is highly, highly inflammatory free radical. And so people with diabetes end up damaging their heart, damaging their blood vessels, damaging their kidneys as a result, having peripheral vascular issues,
Yep.
peripheral neuropathy,
Yep.
which is free radical damage to their nerves
Mm-hmm.
and then therefore to their arteries. And
it affects circulation.
it affects circulation in their eyes. And so this is why it's so important for people to know how to keep their blood sugar level down, and even more importantly, how to fight inflammation.
Right, because that's a big precursor for any type of heart disease. It's chronic inflammation.
The high blood sugar causes the inflammation, which causes the damage. Well, there are some people who cannot get their blood sugar down no matter what they try. Their pancreas has stopped functioning. It's not producing any insulin. So they're taking shots or they're on an insulin pump. And even with all the new science of managing diabetes, if you take a person like that who has to be on a pump and you measure their A1C at the end of the month, the end of 3 months, it's still going to be high. It could be 6, it could be 7, it could be 8. And they would normally have very, very high inflammation and all kinds of catastrophic symptoms from their diabetes, including death. My sister died at the age of 31 from diabetes.
Jeez.
And this was many, many years ago, so it was way before they had insulin pumps.
Yep.
And they didn't even have human insulin at that point.
Oh, goodness.
So she got very, very sick very, very quickly. She got diabetes when she was 5 years old.
Oof.
And 31 was actually a long time to live to back in that day, when if people got diabetes at 5 years old, normally they never lived to be that old.
Wow.
So she lived a long time for a person in that era. Okay?
Right.
But she had obviously extremely high inflammation.
Right.
And back then we didn't have things to help people get their inflammation down.
No.
We didn't have stabilized superoxide dismutase like is in our barley product.
Right.
Which dramatically reduces your inflammation from high blood sugar. And we didn't have trimethylglycine to reduce your level of homocysteine. We had vitamins, the ACE vitamins,
right?
A, C, and E,
antioxidants.
Yep. But back then we didn't really help people get enough selenium or zinc. It was just the very dawn of the discovery of proanthocyanins in things like grape skin extract,
right,
and the maritime pine
polyphenols
extracts,
and things of that nature,
and concentrated curcumin that help to reduce your inflammation. We now know that if you use these things,
right,
you can have diabetes that's seemingly out of control, but you can have inflammation that's 10, 20, 30 times lower than the average person who doesn't even have diabetes.
Right. And I think it's important to make the distinction. So the inflammation and your sugar level are related. And especially in someone who can't regulate a sugar level, you could have an A1C that's very high. But if you can mitigate the inflammation that's causing, you can actually lower your inflammation level, which we talk about. That's called your C-reactive protein.
Yep.
And so if you check your CRP levels, you want those to be well under 3. 3 is actually kind of borderline.
3 is still going to lead to inflammatory disease processes before you live out your full life. So you want to get it down below 0.5 is the magic number, where if you can get your CRP, which is a measure of your inflammation. It's not inflammation itself.
Right. It's a measurement.
It's a protein produced in your liver in response to inflammation. But if you can get that number down below 0.5, you don't have an inflammation problem at that point, even if you have diabetes.
Right. And the reason why that's important is we say this a lot. And if you're a new viewer of the podcast, inflammation in your body's like a log burning in a fire, right? Mm-hmm. And you can either burn fast or you can burn slow. And what causes you to burn faster is excessive amounts of inflammation. And in essence, it shortens your life, right? Yeah. Because just kind of like your sister, she had so much inflammation that by around 31, couldn't handle it. Yeah. And so as you go through and you accumulate toxins and you increase inflammation through things like smoking and drinking, and then maybe having diabetes, other factors, you're just going to burn up into ashes faster than you want to. Yeah. And so by being able to mitigate that burn, throwing a fire hose on it, with things like SOD, powerful antioxidants, healthy diet, exercise, you're going to be able to effectively lower that and kind of in a way extend your life, you know?
Yes, your lifespan and your health span.
There you go.
As well. So another thing that causes a lot of inflammation in addition to sugar is iron. So iron is essential for human health.
Absolutely.
Without iron, you wouldn't be able to deliver oxygen to your cells and you wouldn't be alive. Mm-hmm. Okay. But too much iron is very dangerous. Too much iron damages your mitochondria, which are the powerhouses of your cells, and creates a situation where you have a energy production metabolism issue that you're not producing enough energy, and it's very bad for your heart, and it's extremely bad for your brain. Mm-hmm. We now know that with Alzheimer's, there's these collections of proteins, but there's also an issue with those collections of proteins are damaging the mitochondria, which is not producing enough energy. And in order for you to have connections in your brain from one neuron to the other, it requires a tremendous amount of energy to create the connection and to maintain the connection. And when you damage your mitochondria with tau proteins too high of iron, those connections vanish. They disappear. They can't be maintained without enough energy. And there's research going on right now where they are showing that if they can restore the mitochondrial function and have it produce enough energy, those connections actually grow back.
Interesting.
And the symptoms of Alzheimer's diminish significantly.
Really?
And people can regain their memory, et cetera, et cetera.
So in a way, really what we're talking about here is when you're not producing energy the way you should in the mitochondria, it doesn't just affect the body, it affects the brain, these neuronal connections. You need an extremely large amount of energy to just get them going, and then a great supply to keep it going. And then literally, if you're not doing that, they vanish. So that's going to lead to Alzheimer's, dementia, things.
It leads to dementia. And that relates directly to your heart in regard to circulation. Mm-hmm. So we know that some people that have signs of dementia, when they increase the circulation to their brain using a PEMF mat, a circulation mat, their dementia diminishes and sometimes goes away because they actually had enough nutrients to power the mitochondria. Mm-hmm. The mitochondria were not damaged, but their circulation was so low
they couldn't get there,
that the nutrients and oxygen couldn't make it there. And when you increase circulation, it helps tremendously, because for you to have proper mitochondrial function, it requires a fuel source that has to get there through the blood, carbohydrates or fats, and to a much lesser degree proteins, to be burned for fuel. But in order to get the fire started to burn that fuel to make energy, you have to have fire starters.
Mm-hmm.
Vitamin B1, B3, B6, coenzyme Q10, lots of oxygen in order to make this fuel that is so necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So circulation is a huge issue for heart health. And if you imagine heart, there's large arteries in the heart
Mm-hmm.
that are pumping blood out throughout your body. But as you get further and further away from the heart, of course, the circulatory system gets smaller and smaller relatively.
Microvessels,
And now you have microvessels, right, which have to expand and contract in order to move the blood.
yeah, like an undulation. It's not one of the things, I don't remember the number, but your heart only pumps a certain percentage.
25%.
It's okay, I said last time something like 50, and you're like, oh, no, it's way less.
25.
It's 25.
And you know, those capillaries, that microcirculation, is in your heart itself.
Right.
So the only way to get nutrients and oxygen from your blood to a cell is at the microvessel level. So your heart is filled not only with large arteries, but with lots of microvessels
To deliver the oxygen and nutrients.
So if those
Makes sense.
microvessels are not opening and closing, you're going to have heart disease. Right? This is why circulation is so important. Now, there are biological substrates that help with circulation. Arginine and citrulline help to produce nitric oxide, which helps the endothelium expand and it pushes the capillaries open. Right? Phosphatidylcholine, very important for the cell walls to keep them elastic. Right? And this allows then the efficient transport of oxygen and nutrients, along with pulsed electromagnetic forces. So the core of the earth and the sun are producing massive amounts of PEMF. And when they hit the human body, it helps to expand those capillaries. And so there's that. The other part is muscular. So when you're moving around and you're exercising, your muscles are contracting, expanding, and they're pushing on those little capillaries and making them pump blood. If you don't exercise, well, you're not going to have as good a circulation as you otherwise could have.
Absolutely.
And if your circulation is poor, unfortunately, what happens is your nerve cells need nutrients from the circulation. And if they don't have it, they deteriorate.
Oh, yeah.
That's and now those nerve cells can't fire. And the firing of those nerve cells also creates good circulation. So it's a catch-22. If you have poor nerve conductivity or production, you're going to have poor circulation. If you have poor circulation, you're going to have poor nerves, which is then going to cause worse circulation. And that's when people end up with amputations and that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you would think, so exercise, we all know, raises your heart rate as well.
Yeah.
Right? And so by raising the heart rate, you're helping to increase circulation just in the action of exercise, you know, and
even after you stop exercising, the benefit goes on for sometimes hours afterwards.
Yeah, it's very similar to the PEMF, Matt.
Yeah.
Those benefits actually tend to continue on for hours after using a PEMF mat. So,
So, Raleigh, the issue of sleep, obviously, also really, really important. We have a whole podcast on sleep.
Absolutely. It's called Tips for Sleep. Actually, you go to boomerboost.com and you just look up sleep tips. It'll bring up a podcast we did that goes over some really good things to do in order to wind down. You know, a routine is very important. That way your body knows it's time.
Yeah. We also have a sleep aid product called Good Night Formula.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it has nutrients in it that, if circulated properly, will get to your brain and will help you to fall asleep.
Yeah, it actually triggers this thing called progressive relaxation.
Yes. And the more that occurs and the better you sleep, right, the more healing you have during sleep, the better detoxification you have during sleep. It's when your long-term memories are formed during sleep. And really crucial for your overall health, including your heart health.
Yeah, I mean, the body repairs a majority of itself during sleep. And so if you're not sleeping well, then you're not giving your body a chance to repair itself very well either. That's why sleep is so important. And yeah, again, check it out, boomerboost.com.
So another really big thing, Raleigh, is habits. Habits of exercise, habits related to stress, and also habits related to the food people eat.
Yep.
So we know that even still to this day, 25% of all the calories consumed in the United States is from drinking soda pop.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, what does that do? Raises your blood sugar, raises your inflammation, damages your capillaries, including the ones in your heart. And in order to change that addiction to sugar, right, we have a whole podcast about sugar.
Yep.
And we have a whole podcast about habits.
Yep. It's called America's Sugar Addiction.
Yep.
Check it out.
And the one on habits,
Tiny Habits.
Tiny Habits.
Yep.
So knowing the latest techniques, the latest state of the art in managing your habits is very, very valuable knowledge to have, because if you can't change your habits because your brain is addicted to sugar or alcohol or smoking or drugs, you are going to have a very, very hard time changing those addictions unless you have knowledge about how to change your habits. So
exactly.
Watch those. This is the beginning of the year. It's Heart Health Month. Watch those podcasts on habits. We don't have time to go into it today.
No, but just go to boomerboost.com again. Here's it up on the screen. Search in Tiny Habits, and you'll be able to find it. Really good stuff from some really high-level people in these podcasts that it can help you. So definitely take a look if you get the chance. Really good stuff.
The other thing is, Raleigh, in regard to managing stress, which we know, they say stress kills.
Yep.
And we know exactly what it is that's happening with a couple of different interconnected metabolic pathways. One of which is having the generalized belief that things are not okay. And they say that in the United States, the average person is of the belief that things are not okay 95% of the time. So they're under stress, they're producing too much cortisol. And unfortunately, what occurs when you're of that belief, your amygdala, a part of your brain, sends a message to the frontal part of your brain. Things are not okay. That message is sent to your heart, your actual heart. And it tells your heart things are not okay. So your heart beats this very rhythmic motion with the same amount of time between each heartbeat, which sends a message to the amygdala that says things are not okay. It's a vicious loop. Now, if you're of that belief that things are not okay, you then also kick in a second metabolic pathway, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, that sets up another loop that has you produce cortisol and sometimes adrenaline from your adrenals that are very, very damaging when they are sustained at a high level, including possible death.
Yes.
People can die from hyperadrenal disease. And there's a technique that helps to block this vicious loop, and it's from the HeartMath company.
Absolutely.
And there's a device you can get. I was just telling somebody about this yesterday.
Yep.
In regard to their wife that was having issues with anxiety and stress. And you can get a device called Inner Balance.
Yes.
So if you go to heartmath.com,
yes,
you can find it. If you want to learn about it, go to our podcast called Finding Your Inner Balance.
That's exactly the one. We actually go through a whole review on, kind of tell how it works, explain where you can find it. One of the things, it's an app, so it's easy to use. And it's got a very sophisticated but easy to use device that you clip to your ear, and it gives you your heart rate variability.
Yeah.
And you also have in the app a mandala that
Mhm.
allows you to get your rhythm, if
Right.
you will.
It shrinks and expands,
There you
and
go.
you sync your breath to it.
Yep.
Right.
And it really helps. And while you're doing this exercise of breathing, you're supposed to focus on gratitude,
Yep.
right? Because gratitude helps you live in joyful anticipation for the next thing to be grateful for.
And it's the opposite of things are not okay.
Well, yes, of course.
And so then what happens is the signal starts to say things are okay because I'm focused on gratitude.
Yep.
And I'm relaxed because I'm breathing rhythmically. And your heart rate variability changes.
Mm-hmm.
So the time between heartbeats becomes more variable.
Mm-hmm.
And as that occurs, your heart then is sending a signal
To the
to your
amygdala.
amygdala saying things are okay.
There you go.
And your amygdala goes, well, okay, cool,
We're
things
good.
are okay. I'll signal the frontal cortex to tell the heart to keep doing that because everything's okay now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we've run into lots of people over the years who have used our products, used them, and have reported back that they were still not feeling great. And then we take a delve into a conversation with them, and we ask them about how are they sleeping, how's their stress levels, and many times they say, "Oh, well, my stress levels. That's my husband died a year ago, and I haven't been able to sleep." And da da da.
Right.
So the point I'm making is, no matter how many nutrition products you're taking, if you are stressed, you're still going to feel horrible.
Still going to be sick.
Yeah,
And
well, that.
so the techniques that we teach on our podcast, the Havening technique, finding your inner balance, the emotional freedom technique.
Mm-hmm.
We teach a technique called the ultimate mind calming
Head
exercise.
circles, that's a great one.
There's stress management techniques in the sleep podcast.
Yes.
Okay. There's also stress management in nonviolent communication.
Very good one. That's a very good one.
But a lot of stress comes from relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the problems with relationships are the type of communication
Mm-hmm.
that people use. The concept of nonviolent communication teaches people. The book called Nonviolent Communication, our podcast, teaches people how to communicate in a very specific way that helps people to remain calm, that helps people to support each other,
Mm-hmm.
and helps people to have a more joyful life
Mm-hmm.
and feel validated.
Yes.
And very, very important technique for learning to get along in the world. I was fortunate enough to go and study with a man in up in Asheville.
Mm.
And he has his own clinic up there that teaches NVC. And I was able to go and meet him and spend time with him and learn. And then he had an online course you could take.
Nice.
It went for 6 or 8 weeks. I took the online course, practiced it in preparation for making our podcast on nonviolent communication. So that's the real deal. It's coming right from the top teachers on this topic.
Absolutely.
What I learned from them, I put into a 20-minute or half-hour podcast with you.
Yeah, we actually, it's called How to Use Nonviolent Communication.
Yep.
If you go to boomerboost.com, search nonviolent communication, you'll be able to find a great podcast that goes over the steps. It's fairly simple, but you have to be aware of using it. You know, it's like going to a job and having the right tool, but not feeling like going to the truck to get it.
Yep.
You got to go to the truck and use it. Don't forget it's there because it's a very valuable tool.
Exactly. And then probably the last thing is exercise.
Yes.
Right? Exercise is really important for your heart. Your heart's a muscle, needs to be exercised, has to speed up the beating every once in a while.
Absolutely.
In order to keep it strong.
Right.
Like any muscle, you have to use it. And exercise needs to include some type of resistance exercise with weightlifting, stretch band, and some form of cardiovascular, whether it's walking, fast walking, running, bicycling, playing sports.
Swimming is good.
Swimming is really good. Playing tennis, things like that.
Absolutely.
Are all really important. And we have a good friend, Dave Spinelli.
Yes.
He's an exercise expert.
Yes.
who was kind enough to come to our studio and do a podcast with us on exercise.
Yes, it's called The Importance of Exercise with
Yep.
Dave Spinelli.
Yep.
So check that one out too. It actually, in there, we go into a little bit about habit management as well, because
Yes.
exercising is another habit that you have to build.
Yep.
It's not just like, hey, I'm going to go exercise, and it's easy to do,
And,
especially if you haven't in a while.
and Dave is an expert in getting people motivated. He has an app.
Yep.
He does private coaching to
Yes,
help
he does.
people get on track with their exercise. And anybody that feels that they might need a coach can give us a call, and we can hook you up with Dave.
Absolutely.
And he'll take care of you.
Yeah, man. A lot of good stuff we went over, because when you think about it, so New Year, we're striving for more in 24. We've got Heart Health Month coming back right on the back of the new year. You know,
Mm-hmm.
We've got Black History Month. We've got Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of love holidays there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So you want to be strong, not only with your heart, but with your love, right? Because being kind of on the gratitude kick, being grateful for those who you love, can increase heart health in itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we get ready to go into Valentine's Day, Heart Health Month, let's keep these things at the top of the mind, because they could be easy to forget, especially if you get bogged down with the everyday. So anyway,
Absolutely.
That's what I had to say on that.
Well, thank you, Raleigh. And thank you, everyone, for watching Live Forever Young Radio Live. And we will see you on the next show.
See ya.